Okay. So today we are doing Perek Ayin Zayin, or no, Ayin Vav, sorry. We are doing Perek Ayin Vav, which is 76. And this is a continuation of a few from before it, where Asaf is speaking about the time right before Mashiach. And in this particular parak, he's speaking about the war of, like specifically about the war of Gog and Magog, which traditionally will be the war immediately before Mashiach comes. So we all know that in the time moving up to Mashiach, Hashem's majesty, Hashem's greatness will be shrouded by the troubles that we go through, and then will be this war of Gog and Magog, which we're counting on that this is what we're busy going through now and coming to its very quick end, please God. And then we'll be able to see the majesty of Hashem in the world, in the entire world. So just to give you a little bit of his a history background for what's going on in this parak. So it's talking about the war of Gog and Magog, as I said, but it's taking its precedence from the war with King Chizkiyahu and Sancherib. So King Chizkiyahu was the king of Malchus Yehuda. That means of the two tribes, okay, Yehuda and Binyamin. Now, the word Chizkiyahu literally means my strength is Hashem. However, Chizkiyahu did not react properly to the miracles that Hashem made for him. So the Gemara explains that Chizkiyahu never felt like he had to give thanks to Hashem or sing praises to Hashem for the huge miracles that happened to him over and over, because he was incredibly learned. He spent huge amounts of every day studying Torah, and he felt that that in itself was thanksgiving. So that's what he did as his thanksgiving. It says also in the Gemara that Hashem intended for Chizkiyahu to be Mashiach, to be the Mashiach. He was very, very great, and he had the capability, if we could say that, to be Mashiach. And the angels, the Malachai Hadin, the angels of justice in heaven, came to Hashem, and they said, Hashem, that's a crazy plan. You have a David HaMelech he sang praise after praise and song after song in your honor, and you didn't even allow him to see the Beis Hamikdash. Why wasn't he Mashiach? What happened? And so Hashem said, "You're right." That was the end of the plan of Chizkiyahu being Mashiach. So in this particular chapter, Asaf is trying to compensate for Chizkiyahu's lack of praise of Hashem. So let's see what happens and how Asaf describes to us the time before Mashiach. I think I felt that it's very applicable to nowadays. So it begins trying to understand that the Sancherib and his army are going for Eretz Yisrael. They're going for the Yidden, and they're going in specific for Yerushalayim. And one of the big things that they did that we know about is they made a siege around Yerushalayim. And what happened is that in the middle of the night, Hashem allowed the army of Sancherib to see the Chayos HaKodesh, the holy angels in heaven. Now, regular people cannot see angels and survive. So they were all sleeping. It was midnight, and the angels appeared to them, and they all died in their sleep. So it says that Sancherib's army was 2.5 million men. He had about 85,000 people who were generals and specially trained and whatever, and they just died in their sleep, and everybody else ran away. So this is like this huge miracle that happens. And so Asaf begins. It says, "Lamnatzach bin Ginois." The song that I'm going to tell you, the instructions to the conductor, how should the song be played? Bin Ginois, with lots and lots of musical instruments, with great with great thanksgiving. Mizmor la'asaf shir. This is a song. It's a mizmor and a shir, which is so it's got all the qualities of both the mizmor and the shir. In other words, it has words, or it can be sung without words, just with this incredible tune. And whoever would hear it would know that this is a song of thanksgiving. Now, the capitals begins to explain to us what was happening in this time. So it says, Noida Yehuda Elokim, Hashem is well known in Yehuda, but Israel Gadol Shemoi, and in Israel his name is great. So again, to understand what's going on in the world, Chizkiyahu believed, he placed all of his trust in Torah and in Hashem rather than in military might. So he instructed that all the people had to be proficient in Torah study, and he also said that anybody who wasn't learning Torah would be considered a traitor or a deserter. And so, the people of his time in his kingdom really knew Torah. They spent a good amount of time learning Torah, and that was men, women, children, boys, girls, like everybody was studying Torah. And so, quite literally, Asaf says, Noida Yehuda Elokim. In the kingdom of Yehuda, Hashem was known. The people really, really knew and understood Torah. But Yisrael Gadol Shemai. So Yisrael refers to the 10 tribes who were lost, okay, who had gone out into exile early. And says that even those 10 tribes, they were not completely lost yet, and they kept an ear out for what was going on in Israel. And they heard about Torah, they heard about, they sent questions in to ask about what's happening in Yehuda. And it says that the biggest thing that they kept was the spark of belief that they were Jewish. And interesting that the commentaries tell us that firstly, when Sancheriv fell, the Jews who were already in exile, the Jews of the 10 tribes, heard about it and rejoiced. And it says that this spark of belief in Hashem and belief in their own Yiddishkeit and like knowing or feeling that Hashem was great stayed alive in them for always and stays alive until now, which is why we have so many tribes and people and whatever who claim to be from the 10 tribes. So some are nonsense, but there may be those that are really descendants of the 10 tribes. Doesn't make them Jewish, because there's so many intricate laws in being Jewish, but it does mean that they very well could have ancestors who are from the 10 tribes of Yidden. And that's what it says in this pasuk over here, B'Yisrael Gadol Shemoi, and among the Jews from the kingdom of Israel, Hashem's name still remains great. Carries on explaining and says, Vayhi b'shalom sukkoi, and we're going to translate it literally to start with, and was that his sanctuaries, Beis HaMikdash, was in Yerushalayim, and his dwelling place in Tzion. So just to understand it literally, first of all, when Hashem created the world, he made it that Yerushalayim would be the place of holiness, or extra holiness. And this place, which he designated to be this extra holy place, which we call Yerushalayim, was originally called Shalem. You know that because when Avraham went to fight the wars and he came back and he met Melchizedek Melech Shalem. Melchizedek, the king of Shalem. This was Yerushalayim. And then after the Akedah, Avraham renamed the place and he called it Hashem Yireh. Hashem will see, with the intention that whenever Hashem judges the Jews, he should see the merits of the fathers. And he was speaking specifically about the schus, the merit of him willing to do the Akedah. And this place will be a good place for us Yidden to good judgment. So then Hashem took the two names and combined them. The the Yeru part is from Hashem Yireh, and the Shalem, okay, Yerushalayim, is from its original name. So that's understanding this pasuk very literally, that Hashem is there in His sanctuary in Yerushalayim. Taking this a little more, looking at it more deeply in a different way. So the word Shalem means complete. And how do we get Hashem's kindness, Hashem wanting to give, Hashem wanting to be kind to us, is when we are shalem, when we are complete in our service of Hashem. And the Medrash explains that there are three times, three ways that a Jew could consider himself that he's doing some Yiddishkeit shalem completely. And that's when he's involved in one of three mitzvahs: going to the mikveh, where he immerses his entire body in the water; sitting in a sukkah, which is even greater than going to the mikveh in this case, in this instance, because it says that in a mikveh he goes without clothes. When he goes into his sukkah, he goes even with his shoes. He takes them with to do the mitzvah. And the third way that he does a mitzvah completely with his whole body is when he lives in Eretz Yisrael. It says Vayhi b'shalem sukkah, when a person is complete in doing his mitzvahs, that's sukkahs or mikvah or living in Eretz Yisrael. This is when Hashem is going to come back and live in Eretz Yisrael and bring Mashiach, so to speak. What does it mean? Umanusay b'tzion, and his sanctuary, his living is there in his dwelling is in Zion. So it says that when Sancheiriv, the Medrash tells us that when Sancheiriv was sieged around Jerusalem, Chizkiyahu, instead of going out to war, he and Yeshayahu went into the Beis HaMikdash, and they started davening there in the Beis HaMikdash. And while they were davening and davening and davening, that's when a flame, it says, came out of the Beis HaMikdash, and that's when 185,000 of Sancheriv's men just died as a result. And so everybody saw it. It wasn't a secret. It was obvious to everybody who was near there, involved, around there, that Hashem is in Zion. Hashem is definitely there and helping them. And it was at this time that when they went through the spoils of Sancheriv's army, Sancheriv's camp, actually, they found the throne of Shlomo HaMelech, and they put it up for Chizkiyahu to sit on. So Asaph continues in this capital, and he explains. He says, Shama Shibar Rishve Keshes. There he smashed the arrows from the bows, Magen v'cherev u'milchama selo, the shields, the swords, and the weapons of war forever. So again, looking at this pasuk in a very literal way, Rashi explains that Sancheiriv was marching through the world, and he was taking over one place after another, and in the words of Rashi, Sancheriv's arrows shot across the world, and they were just unhindered. Everybody seemed to be falling at the hand of Sancheriv, and finally he comes to the gates of Yerushalayim, and Shama over there, Shibar Rishve, his arrows didn't work so well anymore. The Medrash tells us that Chizkiyahu gave his men weapons to keep them safe. So he said the main way that you're going to stay safe is by studying Torah. That's what's going to keep Hashem on your side and help you to win this war. But people also have to be prepared physically for war, and so he gave his men these different kinds of ammunition: bows and arrows, swords, shields, and all kinds of war instruments, which they would keep in case they needed to use them. And the commentaries tell us that Chizkiyahu prepared for his war with Sancheriv the same way that Yaakov prepared for his war with Esav, the same way that we should be preparing for this war now and um, facing whoever we are facing at the moment. So, or it says for the war of Gog and Magog. So, how did Yaakov prepare for his war with Esav? It says he prepared a three-way preparation. First of all, he davened. He told Hashem, whatever happens, he needs Hashem's help. Then he looked for gifts. Okay, so if you remember the story in the Parsha, Yaakov sends all different kinds of animals to Esav to try and make him happy. To so. And then, thirdly, he faces Esav, and he faces Esav with a real plan. He knows how he wants to split up his camp. He knows how he's going to fight a war if he has to. He knows like the details of how he's going to fight this war. So when when Chizkiyahu faced Sancheriv, he also made this three-point plan. He davened. That was the most important thing. He sent gold and silver to Sancheriv, and Sancheriv actually mocked him for it and told him doesn't need it. And then he had an army prepared and ready to fight the war. And it says at the same time as the same three things we need to do as we fight the war of Gog and Magog. The first and most important thing is to daven, to say Tehillim, and to turn to Hashem. The second thing is the giving of tributes or gifts, and this, at the time of the war of Gog and Magog, is not talking about giving it to the Gog and Magog, but talking about giving it to Hashem. In other words, the mitzvahs that we do is the gifts, the tributes that we're giving to Hashem, and saying to Hashem in merit of that which I'm giving you, we want to win the war. And the third thing that we have to do is what the Hebrew word hishtadlus. We have to make an effort. We actually have to have an army. We have to have an iron dome. We have to have plans, right? We have to have all those kind of things as well. But we mustn't get discouraged if those things don't work as well as we're hoping, because it says in Mashiach time, weapons will be worthless. We all say the sentence easily. They'll beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. That nation will not fight a war against nation. So that we need to have all those like military capabilities, but we mustn't be disappointed if we don't see them working the way they want. And taking this passage into a third level, what is all this ammunition that we're talking about? So it lists here what kind of ammunition. It says keshes, which are bows and arrows, mogain, which are shields, and cherev, which are swords. And what are our shields, our bows, and our swords? So say the commentary is that the shields are our merits. What protects us are the merits that we have, the mitzvahs that we do, the good things that we are doing. And what is cherev and keshes, the swords and the arrows? This is two different kinds of davening which we need to be involved with. So there are the two different kinds of davening. The one is quick informal davening, right? Please Hashem, help me. I'm scared right now. Like just plain informal, impulsive davening, which we all do sometimes. And then there is another kind of davening, which is formal, thought out, planned davening. And both of them are needed in order to fight a war. So this is represented by keshes and cherev. A keshes, a bow, if you want to be a good arrow shooter, you need to plan. Okay, so if you just pick up your bow and arrow and you just put the arrow into the bow and you shoot, it will probably land by your feet. Or go in the opposite direction, or drop, or whatever else. In order to be a good arrow shooter, it has to be a learned skill, it has to be a practiced skill, it has to be a thought about event. And so that is that level of davening where we have to learn it, plan it, do it with thought. Stabbing someone using a cherev, a sword or a knife, is an impulsive act. Okay, it's just, you can just pick up the knife and go for it, and that represents the quick impulsive davening. I need you to help me now, Hashem. This is what I want. This is what I need right now. So says Asaph, these are the different kinds of ammunition we need to take into our war with Gog and Magog. He continues and he says, Na'ara Taradir, Maharare Tarif. You have swept away your enemies, bringing great light. Na'ara means to bring light into the world, and your light is more powerful than all these giants. So this is what Mashiach is going to do. It's going to bring this great light into the world, and this light is much more powerful than anything that's in the world at the moment. Eshtailalu abire leiv. So abire leiv means like the strong of heart, the strong-willed people, and the word eshtailalu, by most opinions, means becomes confused. So it says that at the time of Mashiach, people who seemed so clever, people who seemed so qualified, people who seemed like they really knew what they were doing, eshtailalu, they became silly, they became stubborn, they don't seem as clever as they'd seemed before. Nomush nasam, they would fall into a deep sleep. So it says that like vigorous warriors, like just didn't know what they were talking about. Seemed like they were sleeping. It probably is not politically correct for me to say it, but possibly this reminds us of President of America, who seemed like he's supposed to be so competent, but fell asleep in the middle of his some of his talks and some of his meetings. Nomushnasam, they became sleepy. And even people who were well qualified, they were anshe chayil, they were people of war, couldn't find their hands. They didn't know how to use their weapons. Just on a historical level, it tells us in Shir Hashirim that King Paro and King Tabeka, who was the king of Ethiopia at that time, joined the army of Sancheriv as spies. They decided they would go and pretend that they were loyal to Sancheriv, and then they would tell Chizkiyahu what was happening over there. When Sancheriv found out about this, it says he took them and he tied them up by their hands and their feet, and he left them to suffer, to die, to decide what he wanted to do. And when Sancheriv's army died that night, Paro and Tarbeka remained alive, and they managed to escape, go and give their spying news, and tell the world what a big miracle Hashem had made. So you can take whatever conclusions you like, but we also have seen that whatever the like for example, I think the example that came to me right away is that the Iranians must have been taken over by someone from other forces, the Paras and the Tebekas of our time. That's how Israel managed to do what it did, okay, and get rid of someone in Iran. That's just my opinion, so you don't have to agree with that. And one day they'll come back and they'll tell about the great things that they witnessed, that those armies wanted to do, and because they were there, they were able to tell Israel and make us see big miracles. What are those big miracles? Says the psukim. Migaras choleke Yaakov, nirdam v'rechav asus. You were denouncing them, God of Yaakov, because even their horses and their chariots went to sleep. Ata noira ata, you Hashem are awesome. Umi ya'amod lefanecha. Who can stand before you, Hashem? Ma'azapecha, when you get cross. So he's saying clearly that the war is won by Hashem being cross and angry with the enemy. Mishamayim hishmata din, from heaven your judgment is heard. Eretz Yara, the land sees it. Vishakata, and it becomes quiet. So again, at a literal level, when Hashem decides it's enough, and everybody watches and sees the unbelievable miracles that Hashem makes if He wants. The commentaries explain to us that whenever there is a very big miracle, after the miracle, it is quiet for a little bit. It's just a reaction. That it will be quiet for a little bit, and it's talking about a physical silence. And the biggest example of that, we actually say it in our extra davening on Shavuos, that when Hashem gave the Torah, which was this huge miraculous event, the whole world got quiet. So even the angels stopped singing, even the cows in the meadows didn't make a noise. The world got silent, right? And that's what this pasuk is describing. But taking this slightly little bit further, what does it mean, Eretz Yira, that the land sees it, Vishakata, and gets quiet? The commentaries explain to us that when Hashem created the world, He said, it's not for sure that you're going to exist forever. Your existence depends on whether or not the Jews accept the Torah. If the Jews accept the Torah, the world will continue. If the Jews don't accept the Torah, then I will smash down on the world and there will be no world. There's no purpose for there to be creation anymore. So from the time the world was created until Matan Torah, Eretz Yara, the world was afraid, was petrified, didn't know what was going to happen. Was it going to be smashed and nothing, or was it going to continue? When the Jews accepted the Torah, when they said Na'aseh v'nishma, v'shakata, the world relaxed. It got quiet. Didn't have to be nervous anymore. It was going to continue. It was going to be. Bekum mishpat Elokim, when Hashem got up to do mishpat, to do justice, lahishia kol anvei eretz selo, to save the humble of the land. And over and over and over again, the Torah tells us that the way to get Hashem's on our side is to be humble. Hashem saves the humble, and it's one of our hardest things, being humble. It goes against the nature of most people. And so the time of Sancheiriv, here we have a Chizkiyahu who was so great. And it says that however great he was, and he was very, very great, as we mentioned right at the beginning, he was extremely humble. He didn't take extra honors on himself, even though he was a king. He didn't take extra luxuries on himself. It says that he ate green vegetables and a little portion of meat every day, nothing fancy. And he absolutely lived a humble life, despite the fact that he was a big king. And so say the commentaries that this is why he deserved the miracle of Sancheriv's army falling. Ki chamas Adam teidecha she'eris chamos tachgar, because everyone is going to praise you when we can undo the anger, the wrath of the people who are fighting against us, and cause other people, she'eris, the rest of them, chemos tachgar, to restrain their wrath. Nidru v'shalmu laHashem Elokeichem. Make promises and pay them to Hashem your God. Kol svivov, all the surrounding people who know about the miracles. Yevilu shayla meira, they should bring gifts to Hashem, who brings this fear into the world. And so Asaf says very clearly to us, one of the ways that we've got to react when Hashem makes good things for us, when Hashem does nice things for us, is nidru, make promises, v'shilnu, and pay them. So we're all good at making promises, right? The famous story that everybody tells when they use these words. Please Hashem, if you help me find a parking place, I will pay 1,000 rand. Please Hashem, if you help me find a parking place, 2,000 rand. Don't worry Hashem, I see a parking place by myself, right? That's generally our method of making promises. We are allowed to make promises, but says Asaf, Nidru v'shilmu, make your promises and keep them. Okay, whatever you promise, you must keep. And it's a good thing actually to make promises. We had a teacher, Mara Hela Shalom, and she always used to say to us, bribe God. We must, okay. Sometimes we must bribe God, but we must keep what we've promised, that we're going to, and that's the harder part. And he finishes off. He says, "Yivtza ruach negidim." He Hashem cuts down the arrogant people, Noir Lamalche Eretz, and he is fearsome to the other kings, to the other nations of the world. And so this is how the war of Gog and Magog is going to end. That Hashem is going to help us. He's going to cut down the other nations. They are going to fear Hashem, and the glory of Hashem is going to be obvious and apparent in the whole world. Maybe very fast. Okay, we've seen enough of the war now. We want to see Mashiach. That's it for today.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
Rick.
very much, Rifty.
Thank you.
Good Shabbos, everybody.
Good Shabbos.
Good Shabbos.
Pressing on.
Shaya.
Thank you.